Welcome to Core Voices, the space where every voice has a choice. We are here to share your stories, to celebrate with you, to heal with you, to weep with you, and to smile with you. This is a space that we want to be safe for each of you, non-judgmental, welcoming, and educational. There are many things around us that we need to address, that we need to talk about, and we can only do that when we gather as community. Each of you show up every week to build this community of core voices, and I'm deeply grateful for all of your love, all of your support. If you haven't already visited our website, go and check out corevoices.org. If you haven't been over to our Instagram page, go over there, hit that follow button. On Facebook, the same. Please support us so we can be here to continue to serve you and support you. We've raised many, many valid topics over the past few months, sharing interaction and conversation with you. We want to keep doing that. Core Voices is a space that is very special to me. And today's show is a little extra special because you will all get to meet the fantastic people who selflessly, voluntarily support and hold this space behind the scenes. It is my absolute pleasure and delight to invite the core team of Core Voices to our talk show today. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. This is awesome. Is good.
I think Preet's going to do all the speaking for us today.
Core voice.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Mehtab, Gurjanan, Brahmbind, Preetinder. We don't have Harjap here right now, but he is also a key part of our team as well. Today, we get to share with everybody in the community, in our Core Voices community, what brought us to serve in this space. Why was it needed? Why was it created? Because we haven't yet shared that. We've been doing talk shows, we've been talking about topics, addressing issues. But today, I think it's really important that we meet our family and our beautiful community, get to meet each of you. So it would be wonderful if we could each just speak a little about what this space means to you. What does Core Voices mean to you? And then we'll go into the what's and the hows and the whys afterwards. Preet, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll start because I'm not on mute. Thank you again for having me on the show. This is cool to see everyone. So my name is Preetinder Singh. The reason Core Voices really spoke to me is because this is a topic, like the things that we cover is very important. You know, the things that we're working towards, which we'll kind of get into later on. But for me specifically, is this giving voice to those that really need it, because I feel in our community right now everything's so suppressed. People's voices, not only the women, but also the men's voice within our community. And is this how the structure is at the moment? And I really feel that we can create a change, and we need that change, because right now, how our society is, it's really led by old school thoughts, and I think we need to reconfigure our community and our kind of thought process behind how things are run. And to do that, first we need to enable people's voices. We need to give those in the community the strength to have a voice, and I think our platform is there for that reason. So it's been awesome working with the team, and I'm really excited to see what we can do down the road.
Thank you, Preet. It's fabulous to have you in this space. You have so much wisdom and knowledge and wealth to share with us. And yes, wonderful conversation to share today again. It's lovely to have you back. Brahmbind.
Yeah, my name is Brahmbind. Just to echo what Preet said, I agree with Preet 100%. I think the spaces we occupy, I think, are very, 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 very heavily, I'm losing the word here, but they're occupied in a way where the loudest get the word, and their leadership is what leads the way forward. But a lot of us don't get a space to voice our opinions, especially when it comes to trauma and abuse. And I think Core Voices is that space to allow everyone to have that voice and find their own space to speak out and speak their truth. So I think that's the main reasons I'm involved.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. You guys can leave your mics unmuted. It's fine. Mehtab.
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here tonight. Core Voices is definitely a special place for me to be a part of, and I'm very excited to be a part of this wonderful team. And, we're serving the community in our own unique ways, but now we're coming together and serving, marginalized groups that don't get often enough care and attention. And I think for me, I will bring more of the holistic approaches into this team on how to work with people. And I'm so happy to do it. And I'm just so glad to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mehtab.
Mm-hmm.
Good job.
Hello, everybody. Well, most of you have seen me on the first episode. I'm Guru Channel 4, and I am really, really also happy and honored to be part of this team. I'm doing mostly marketing and social media consulting, just to get the word out of what we do, what are we planning to do in the future. And for me, Core Voices started as a feeling of supporting my sisters, mostly. Started as a space where I feel we can all express ourselves in whatever is happening. And I just wanted to be part of that, and I want to be helpful for them too. That's why I decided to jump into this journey of Core Voices with these wonderful people right here.
Thank you. Thank you, Gurjanan. Each of you are key to the work that we do. And it's, it always takes a tribe. We can't do these things independently. We have to come together. It was how our ancestors and our gurus modeled it for us, that when we come together as community, we can actually make sustainable change. And that is the whole intention here, that when we come together here as this tribe and the extended tribe of everyone who's tuning in and listening, it gives us hope. It allows us to feel what Chardi Kala is when our spirit is rising and we feel full, that yes, this is worth fighting for, and together we can win this battle. And that's what I feel in this space with each of you when we're in our meetings and doing our work, but also in the space where we're addressing the community. It'd be great for everybody to know what Core Voices is, because I think that some people may have some assumptions that it's only for Kaurs, it's not for Singhs, or about the work that we do. So I'd like us all to share and interact freely without formal structure today.
So before we get into that, I wanted to hear your what's Core Voices too, right? And why? Because you were the brains behind this, and it was something that you wanted to do. So why Core Voices? Before we get to us, I want to hear you.
I like the turn of events here.
Yes.
This is a good way to get through the show.
Well, how the turntables.
There you go. Oh, what is Core Voices to me? That's a very good question. To me, it's that thing that I would have hoped for and dreamt of as a child. I wish that there was more adequate support when I was younger. I wish that there were outlets where I could have spoken and sought help, where I wasn't silenced in shame, where I didn't feel like my future was at jeopardy or my parents' izzat and honor was going to be destroyed because of me speaking of an experience. It's what I would have really dreamt of existing when I was a young child. And that was where the thought came from. that the experiences and encounters that we've all endured in different ways through life, through our trials and tribulations, how can we learn from them? If we're on this path of Sikhi, it's about spreading goodness and sowing seeds of positivity and joy through all of the yuckiness. And my accountability to myself was, what can I do? How can I make a small difference to create something better in this world now that I didn't have, or a younger version of myself would have wished for?
That's beautiful. I think that's amazing. And that's why I wanted to help you support this project, because, or this, this organization, because it's so needed. It's so needed. So something I'm curious about, because you talked about that earlier, where, because me being a man, and I think, Brahman as well, I mean, you are a man, but
Thanks.
but
I like the clarification.
So that was one thing, like, if I was, like, you're talking about, you being young and you having to, like, you wish there was this type of organization, then how does Core Voices relate to boys or guys? How can we feel like this is, like, Core Voice? It sounds very, from our perspective, it's meant for women, right? So what was your thought process behind the name?
It wasn't mine. It wasn't my thought process.
Okay.
It was about understanding. And I researched into what the word Kaur means. And when we look at Gurubani, nothing is written for a specific gender. It's written for the soul. It's written for the Atma. And how we navigate through this world using those teachings of Gurubani to improve who we are. Masculine and feminine exist in every human. We all have estrogen and testosterone, if you want to look at it scientifically.
Right.
They cater to those particular characteristics. You have men who are called camp, you have women who are called tomboys, right? The energies exist within every individual body. Whichever one you allow to dominate is the one that will be seen. Now, if we refuse one of those energies within us, we are not fully showing up for who we are. We all have the spirit of fire and rage and strength that we would associate with the male body. We all have grace, gentleness, and love, and that nurturing spirit. It exists within both bodies, right? Which we usually associate with women. When we look at the human body from the perspective of Gurubani, we realize that Kaur and Singh don't identify our gender. They are names to help empower us. Singh exists within the female body as well as the male. Kaur exists within the female body as well as the male. So it was about unlearning that these names, they're not names, these are titles. These are titles that we aspire to, that allow us to channel our greatness that Guru saw within every human and said, reach your fullest capacity. Know what this means to you. It is a sign of royalty. God was given as a title within royal households. Now it's just a name that we use culturally, and it doesn't have that same weight. This is not a space which is only for females. This is a space for all people. God was used because we wanted the spirit of nurturing to come to the forefront. We've got many spaces where rage and anger and even hatred dominate the narrative. And this was a time for something different. If we want to work with the topics that we've been talking about, these sensitive, hard-hitting issues, there has to be love, there has to be daya, there has to be the capacity to listen. So we have to have nourishment at the front of it. How do we show up to care and also use that energy of divine rage at the same time?
Wow.
Core Voices was a spin-off of the English word core, because essentially that's what we're tapping into, our core voices that are locked away, trapped away, silenced within us. How can we release them? How can we make the core of us our way to heal? And it just so happens that's how most people use the word God. They say core. So core voices is our core voices, which are in all bodies.
That's like masterfully explained. That's beautiful.
Now your turn.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I just wanted to see your thought process behind it because you know, it's important for the listeners or viewers right now to kind of see that perspective, because you know, the way you explain it, it's amazing, because we don't see it that way. We see it as a separation. We see it as, you know, well, this is your voice. This is not mine. You know, we have our own issues, but it's not really. It's a community issue, and then we both men and women go through the same types of abuse. It has nothing to do with gender. It's the victim, and it's the person who did it. So I think it was important. I felt like we should have discussed. You know, this is why I wanted to discuss it, because people should know that it's not specifically for women.
Thank you. But I know that you already know this because we had these conversations way back when, but is that how you connect to this space?
Yes and no. So, I mean, to kind of, I guess, you know, I'll talk about why I am here and why I feel core voices is so important. I don't connect personally in the sense that I mean, I'm grateful enough or lucky enough, I don't know the correct term, but I didn't have to experience, you know, I didn't experience abuse growing up, you know, in any form. So I mean, I'm grateful for that. But seeing, you know, people that I love, you know, my sisters and my brothers, and hearing their stories, and seeing that they weren't given that same safe space, you know, where spaces are supposed to be safe, they weren't given that space. And then they had to subdue it, and they had to kind of burn within themselves and make themselves feel horrible, that they were the issue, like, you know, that they were the problem. and and seeing how their mental state, like, it's complete, like it just ruins their life in a way, right? Especially when they don't have that space to speak, and the person who's done it gets to live and do everything in that space and continue to take advantage of so many other people, God knows how many people. And I felt that that was wrong, and that we shouldn't have that type of space for people like that. And so for me, I couldn't stand to see my brothers and sisters um, having to go through these situations. It's not fair, and it should never be allowed, never. Especially in a gurdwara, you know, in our homes. It's so sad to know that, as we all know now, that, you know, like I'm from Maryland, Virginia area. Mehtab is too, and we've been to GGSF. Like, you know, everyone knows what GGSF is now, and this and that whole case on Gurdarshan Singh, right? I've interfaced with him many times, and Mehtab used to learn from him too. Back in the day, she has connections, but you know, it's so irresponsible as an organization, and allowing someone who's done something of that sort to continue to be in spaces where kids are allowed to be there, and in those intimate locations. So I felt like, you know, it's important. I had to step up and support this cause, because we need to give those victims the voice, but we also need to give the voice to people to prepare so that they know and they don't become victims, and they can suss it out beforehand, and also to kind of take the voice out of the perpetrators down the road, because all we're giving people voices, but we're also trying to take away the voice and the strength of those that are causing the pain.
Thank you. Thank you. Mehtab, would you like to
Yeah.
add anything to that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to add to that. You know, 100% agree with what Preet is saying. I think part of the reason why I was drawn to this organization is because I would like to bring a different approach to healing. You know, more on the mental health side, and how can we meet people where they're at? Like, what kind of skills can we as a team, as an organization, bring to meet with the not only the victims, but also have remediation programs for the offenders, because that doesn't exist in our community. Like you said, Breed, like they walk freely, you know, and how can we hold them accountable? How can we bring in these values of Sikhi into, you know, this dialogue within these gurdwara, that we're holding people accountable? You know, how can we pull from not only that, but also, you know, destigmatizing a lot of the issues that come up with this as well. And as somebody who has experience working with offenders, I truly believe that people have the ability to change once they are held accountable. And I believe that people will act and reflect on their actions once they have jumped through enough hoops of fire. And I hope that makes sense when I say that. I understand the rage that's associated with, you know, facing your perpetrator. So I completely understand that as well. And I understand what the victim is also going through on the other hand. But I think my role here is to kind of help, you know, facilitate that dialogue in the best way that I possibly can. Not only pulling, you know, from mental health skills, but also pulling from Sikhi itself. How can we be more compassionate towards individuals in our community, and how can we help them rehabilitate on a mental and emotional level, you know, and then not just, we're not trying to pinpoint certain people and degrading them, because society has already done that, you know. So the goal here is, and I believe that I'll bring some of these values to this organization and to be able to help facilitate that dialogue just a little bit better. But it is challenging to grow up in a community, you know, where you are surrounded by people that have done wrong to others, and information is hid from you, and you don't know what the truth is. And when you grow up and you realize that, I wish I had an outlet to go and talk to somebody about this. But growing up in this particular area, mental health in the Gurdwara did not exist, you know. And I think, Preet, you can speak on this as well. So it's been challenging to kind of wrap your head around what's been going on in recent events.
No, I agree with you. I think one thing you pointed out, I think it was when you said that if, you know, he was held accountable, like just talking about the GGSF Gurdarshan Singh thing. If the person is held accountable right away, you know, reform can come much faster and things can change. But because that space wasn't given, and because it was hidden, and the voice wasn't given, it just continued to fester.
Right. Absolutely.
Who knows how many other people were affected.
Right. Absolutely.
And I mean, I know you all you can agree that this is not a isolated issue. This is an issue that's like rampant within our community. I mean, within the world itself. But you know, speaking to our community, gurdwaras, our homes, places where we should be safe, places where we should have that opportunity to just, you know, call home and have a safe haven. But those are the places that these predators are preying on, right? And I think that's very unfair.
I think it's also sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's also a lot to do with the hush hush culture we have within the Punjabi community. I think we talk about accountability and like superseding the structures in place. Like our legal system needs to be adjusted for sexual assault survivors and victims of sexual assault and sexual violence. Of course, there's tons of debate about that within the legal community. Right, and having a background in that, knowing that I can constantly talk about it, but I think it's also like a lot of cultural things within subcultures, right? So I can speak for the Punjabi community, being in Canada, being in one of like the biggest Punjabi communities, Canada and Brampton. We have such a hush hush culture, right? What we project outwards as Punjabis is everything's fine, everything's great, right? But on the inside, I think the Punjabi saying "Tid ch lako ki gal rakh de," right? So we basically have whatever happens internally in our but jokes aside, but like what we have that's wrong in our families and whatnot, we close it up and we close all doors to it. We don't talk about it, not within our family or outside our doors of the family. So there is no opportunity for healing. There is no opportunity of discussing your trauma with someone else. And that's why abusers get put into positions where they feel like there is no consequences against them. And we talk about GGSF, right? I was under a rock for a little bit, but just reading up on it in the last couple of weeks, he was in a position of power, right? He utilized his power. There's a district, I think it's a second district case that he was being deported and he got out of it because the Gurdwara supported him through his whole legal challenges for with GGSF. I think that was like in early 2000s that happened. So there's multiple things, right? We have this hush hush culture in our community that we also need to address, because it's like we as a community, we're so tightly knit and we're tightly wound, but when it comes to stuff like this, nobody wants to talk about it. Everyone runs away from the topic.
But why do you think that is? I mean, why?
It's a culture of shame, right? I think we think more about our family reputation, or more about what are others going to say about us. It's not about, there's this perpetrator out there who abused my daughter, my son, whoever it is, put them in a vulnerable position, took advantage of them. Instead of teaching my son or daughter, like, this is not right, you need to speak up, and this person needs to be held liable, we hush them up in order to, what is the community going to think? What's going to happen to us? What are they going to think about our family? It's all about that. In my head, that should be a non-existent factor, but it's such a prevalent thing in the Punjabi community.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah. Gurchanan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Well, I cannot speak from the Punjabi community, although I have been sharing a lot with the Punjabi community for the past years. For the ones who don't know, I am married into a Punjabi family. So yeah, there are like cultural nuances that I'm still learning. What I have noticed, as what Brandon said, is that there is a hush hush culture. There is there is this tendency of not talking about things, either emotionally, either if something happened to you, or even asking questions or questioning something is not very encouraged to. So kind of very different from where I come from, at least from my family bringing. So one of the things that shocked me about this case, and specifically when I read about it, and yes, as Preeti Devi mentioned, like, it's not something that happened just there. It has been happening for a long time in in any other places, and we just don't have information or knowledge about it. So what shocked me about this one is that not only this person was committing abuse, is that he was how can I say? He was supported by the committee, and you're like, the committee knew that he had not really like charged, that he was convicted to it. I don't know, maybe what if they knew? They knew everything was going on, and still they move forward, and so I think the problem is systematic. We're not held accountable, nor the people who are committing the crime, nor the people who are allowing those things to happen. Right. So I believe that our generation and the generations coming behind us are changing those things. We are speaking up. This is a testimony of our change, and I believe that's why core voices is important. And I believe if you find something that is not correct, and that's what Sikhi teach us, then you stand up and do the thing. You don't wait for somebody else to tell you the thing. You don't wait for somebody else to rescue. You get up. You have the resources. Find your people and do your deed. So that's I believe that's why this is very important for our community, and even for people who are not Punjabi too, because we also want to feel safe in the Gurdwara, because that's what Guruji has teaching us. Gurdwara is a safe of refuge to find shelter, and that's not the case nowadays. Why? What changed, and when, and why are we not speaking about it?
You're right.
That's so valid, and I think that I hear everything that you guys are saying, Brumpin, everything that you talked about, and although I feel the same way, what I've learned to understand is that the generation before us didn't deliberately set us up to fail. That wasn't their intention. They did the best they could with the tools they had. They never had this luxury of being able to talk about their problems. They were told to zip it and get on with it. And when you're taught to have thick skin, you think that that's the only way to be and to live. And that culture of shame has been perpetuated over the years in a way that it has destroyed families, it has taken lives, it has done so many atrocious things. And we now are in a generation of more privilege and luxury where we can actually use our voices and talk about it. 20 years ago, forget it, even like 5 years ago, as women, if we were sitting in this space on a public platform talking about things like this, our own community would hate on us. Our own community would be the ones to try to take us down and say, no, she is the devil, and, you know, don't speak to her. And, you know, she's a bad person. You don't talk about things like sex or abuse or domestic violence or alcoholism. We'd rather pretend it doesn't exist. Because they didn't know how to talk about it. They didn't know how to deal with it. They just knew it existed, right? I say that looking at my own family. You know, I come from a childhood of domestic violence and alcoholism. People around me, most of them were oblivious to my home circumstances. Now, in these recent years of sharing these stories of my childhood with the public, people are reaching out to me saying, oh my God, that's terrible. I had no idea that was going on. Yet, most Punjabi households have some sort of an encounter with domestic abuse or with alcoholism. So it is common, it is normal. And it's a negative normal that we can now change and transform. Just as we know those things exist, sexual violence is something that we all know exists. Whether we choose to ignore it, whether we choose to protect it, or whether we choose to stand against it, that depends on us as individuals. And this case, the Gurdarshan, I can't call him Singh. I'm sorry, I can't bring the word to my mouth. It's volatile. It makes me want to yell profanities, but I shall not in this space. But the fact that it happened, that it was allowed to happen, that he was protected, and not protected by people, but protected by a Gurudwara, right? A place that's supposed to be safe and welcoming of all people. And this is not an isolated incident, as you so rightly pointed out, Breathe. This exists everywhere. Just a few weeks ago, I had my sister Gurpreet Kaur from the Kaur movement. Now that page amplifies the voice of victims. They are not yet survivors because our community hasn't showed up for them to allow them to heal. Most of them are still, questioned by our community. How can there be so many cases? Oh, they're just looking for attention. This can't be true. There can't be this much of it. Oh, she just wants attention. Oh, she must have been asking for it. And when are we going to come out of that? When is that going to change?
You're right. And it's become normalized, right? And it's become hidden. And I mean, even everyone here right now, we all have some sort of connection with, some sort of abuse, either in the family or in the Gurdwara, someone we know. It's so rampant that it just gets overlooked. It gets like shoved under the rug. And it's so important to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add to that because when I started in Sikhi and going to different spaces, I remember one of the first or second times I went to Dixie Gurdwara in Toronto, Brampton. I met one beautiful Benji, and she like older Benji than me, and I remember her words, like she welcomed me and she was very nice with me and everything. But the one thing she told me is like, be careful with the old man. And I was just like, I'm so new. I don't even know what's nothing. And of course, I come trained from my country. You have like that training that you need to be careful all the time, but I wouldn't expect someone to tell me that in a Gurudwara, right? And because for me, at that time, is like church, like you go and you're fine, you're cool, everybody's nice, but she told me that like, oh, there are some people who are, you need to be careful with them. So, that had an impact in my in my view of like then when I'm okay. It's not saying that all Gurdwaras are like that. It's not saying that I don't feel safe in Gurdwara, but the fact that she told me that says something, right? And as I mentioned before, like I had like two encounters, like bad encounters with men in Gurdwara in my life as Sikh for 6 years. So it hasn't been a lot, but still there have been weird encounters. So when I don't feel safe or I have the need to tell someone like, hey, that person is behaving weird with me, but like, can you do something about it? Like I have to say it. Otherwise, like, who knows? Or feeling not safe in the same space with that particular person. Like I have to leave the Gurugar or I have to leave the Langar hall because I don't want it to be in the same space. So that should not happen, right? In a Gurdwara. So yeah.
No, you're right. It's unfortunate that you had to experience those things. Now, honestly, I think not only are we allowing this abuse to continue, I think one of the other issues is that our community doesn't even understand that it is committing these abuses. And like I think Mehtab can cover this further. Like there's different types of abuse, right? And I think that because we've suppressed this for so long, even the perpetrators, they themselves sometimes, to a certain extent, aren't realizing that they're causing abuse, that they're hurting someone else, that they're doing something wrong, because it gets so clouded and because the community has just shaped their thought process that way. And so not only do we need to stop this, I think we also need to have education within our community because we need to know how to behave, what's right, what's wrong, how to conduct ourselves, how not to conduct ourselves, but also what to look for, right? Because unfortunately, and it's so sad because the older Penji that told you beware the old man or whatever she said, we shouldn't be in positions like that. We shouldn't have to have those type of conversations and those type of warnings in safe spaces like that. That's unfortunate. It should be dealt with. It should our community should be educated enough to know that and have actual safe, like this Gurdwara should be safe and it should always remain safe. So we as a community need to change the process.
Yeah, I think that that point you touch about like educating people on what actually like good behavior or bad behavior, appropriate behavior or inappropriate behavior it is, like it's so important because sometimes maybe because of upbringing, because of normalizing things, people don't realize that they are committing something that is not appropriate, right? So for example, in one of my cases was that a person way older than, it can be my grandpa, okay, was kind of like asking if I was single and if I was available and stuff like that. And it was one of my brother who told me. I was like, what the freak? Like, I don't even want to be like alone with this person or anything. And I even told the person in charge there, and they said like, okay, that's creepy. Like, no, it's okay. Like, we're gonna talk about it. But like, still have seen him in this place, right? Like again and again. I'm like, okay, I think nothing has been done or no, but it was not like the most horrible thing, but it was just uncomfortable. And why? That's not what you go to the Gurdwara for. And like, I don't know. It was just weird. But yeah, I believe like the concept of like asking those things for this person in his head, he didn't think it was inappropriate, but it was very inappropriate. So yeah.
I think, and that's the thing, like the perpetrator, the person who made you feel that way, I'm pretty sure that he himself was so unaware of his creepiness. And probably in his head, he justified that, that he will be able to convince you or whatever, like that he's fantasized something that it will work out. And it's a mental health issue. And I have no, I don't know if Benji wants to share the story or like you discuss her connect. Like she's had to deal with situations like this, you know, when she shared with me. And you know, Mehtab's had issues too. She's you know, she's a photographer and you can speak for yourself too. But like, you know, when she's out shooting weddings and stuff, you know, people think it's okay to just touch you and rub up against you, and these are men, right? Because they think it's okay, or they're drunk or whatever. But you know, these things are kind of conditioned over time, and it needs to be brought forward. I don't know if you guys want to share or not.
Mehtab, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'll share an incident real quick that happened with me a couple months ago. You know, as a wedding photographer, especially in the brown community, people don't see female photographers as often. And when for this particular incident, this gentleman was, you know, under the influence of alcohol, had no idea what he was doing, and comes and thinks it's okay to touch me on my shoulder, and just so he can get a picture taken. And you know, he's out of his mind, drunk, and doesn't have a clue of where he is. People are trying to actually hold him up, and he follows me around the dance floor. And you know, he's like, I was shooting a party, and he comes around again, and he tries to touch me again. And at that point, you know, it's somebody's wedding. Even for me, I'm thinking about, if I make a scene, what kind of, you know, shame am I going to bring to their family? But at that point, I was looking out for my safety. But that thought still came in my mind, because we're so conditioned to thinking that, like, look, you know, like, what are people going to say? And that part is where I think I learned my lesson, is that don't hesitate to get, you know, law enforcement involved. Because there are consequences for people who harass you. There are consequences, natural consequences, that people have to face for their actions, no matter what. And that was a learning lesson for me. And that didn't just happen one time. It has happened multiple times. You know, and and weddings don't happen like that in that nature anymore because of COVID. So things are really different. But it's become a lot more quiet, and things are a little bit more subtle. You know, I still shoot weddings during COVID, and people will still have the tendency to come and tap me on my shoulder. And that at that point, I'm stopping them, correcting them. This is my name. You can call me by my name. If you need my attention, call me by my name, because there's no reason to touch me. And another thing, as we're talking about this, is boundaries. There are no such thing as boundaries in Punjabi culture at all. It's completely toxic. There's different types of boundaries. Like, we're talking about different types of abuse, you know. There's intellectual boundaries. There's boundaries for physical boundaries and mental boundaries. Like, what are you okay with and what are you not okay with? And putting that out there so that nobody tries to cross that boundary. And some people might not even be aware that they're crossing a boundary, because that's their coping strategy to deal with their own stuff, you know, if that makes sense. So it's such a loaded topic where you can go in so many different directions. But I think the number one thing that's sticking out to me as we talk about this is boundaries. You know, as we grow up, we continue to grow up. And, you know, in the future, if we are having children, are we going to teach them about this kind of stuff? Are we going to teach them what healthy boundaries look like? Are you going to leave your child alone to learn Kirtan for an hour once a week, or no? That's a boundary violation. If you do that and somebody comes in, you know, that's where you need to be responsible. And obviously, I'm not saying that the victim needs to be responsible. And the victim can do all the inner work possible. They can do all of that. But it's us bringing this forward to a platform such as a safe space as a gurdwara, or whether it's a church, what have you, and talking about what is not okay in the gurdwara. You know, and I just went in like 20 different directions in like the span of 2 minutes, but I think it's really important that, like, there's no there's no such thing as boundaries in Gurdwara. Other elder women will come up to me and say things like, oh, when are you getting married? Or, you know, when are you doing this or this and this in your life? That's a boundary violation. And I, you know, I will choose to respond just like that. That's none of your business. You're crossing a boundary here. You know, it's little things like that. And the moment we don't stand up to that, it is us enabling that. We're perpetuating that cycle.
It's what you said. It's very toxic, because if we don't respond, then we are rude, and we are trained culturally to be people pleasers, right? I don't know who these people are or why they're so important that we need to be constantly sacrificing our own wellness to please them. But you see the pattern. Our parents grew up in extended households where it was about lots of compromise and trying to make it work.
And medicine, yeah.
The generation, like, well, more so with our grandparents, and then some of our parents chose to live separately from their parents, like from the grandparents, right? And that was very controversial, right? A lot of things have evolved in our community from like, interracial marriages as well. Some that wouldn't have been accepted X amount of years ago in the way that it is now. So I see that there's an evolution. I see that we're becoming more open. I wish that we could have boundaries. I really wish that we could, because those questions, like, I completely resonate. The amount of inappropriateness that we spew out without thinking about it is really, really terrible. Sometimes I just like, it's just the eye roll and I don't know what to say.
Yeah, sometimes I come off as a really rude person because, like, well, first of all, I don't understand old Punjabi, but when they speak to me English and ask these kind of questions, like, once I was asked what caste or caste my husband is, I was like, what does that even mean? Tell me, like, why do you ask me these questions? And the answer is, oh my God, I just really that's not a proper question to ask.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I agree. Like, I agree. For example, I have noticed that around my Punjabi family, like, people don't say things straight to you. They just go around all the way to get to one point. And I'm just
up to you.
No, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, like, I get, as men, we get these type of questions too, and I feel like,
but we get them in a different way, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I'm gonna ask you, like, so basically, like, my point here is that, yeah, like, just to kind of play devil's advocate, or just kind of give a different perspective, most people don't have bad intentions when they ask these questions. It's just, unfortunately, they don't know how to ask or have the correct tone. And it's not like, anyone asking, like, it's rude. I think the person makes a difference who's asking and what their intention is about the question. I just wanted to clarify, like, in my opinion, like, not everyone has bad intention, but majority of the time it's just like, they're trying to compare your life, or they're trying to find ways to judge you, or create a picture in their head, or build an assumption around who you are. Most of the time they ask for that reason, but there are people that are genuinely actually care, but you obviously know these people, and it's different. But yeah, Brahman, what were you saying?
I was just saying, it's just like, I understand what you're trying to say, but I agree with Mehtab, where it's just like, it's across the boundaries, because I get we're a very tight-knit community, and it's just like, we have that loving ability in the Punjabi community that we're all hospitable to each other and want to know everything about each other and all that good stuff. But there's points that are crossed, right? Like, I as a male, when you go to the Gurdwara, I think, like, the weirdest thing is, like, when auntie are looking at you and they have their gaze going and they're like trying to set up your daughters with them, and you're like, I could care less, right? Like, this is not what I'm here to mingle about at the Gurdwara. This is the last thing I'm here.
It's
Gurdwara for. But the point is, I think it's just like,
the expectations of the questions are so different for men and women. Like the expectations of the question, right? Like, people ask you this question because they're expecting you to do something or to answer to something.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, like, how it differs from a question that asks you guys and the question they ask us, like, women.
Yeah, it's also, we're not privy to a lot of the conversations women have, right? Like, a lot of the abuse and all that stuff that happens, the conversations happen between women. None of the males know, unless you get involved and you are a person that someone trusts and leans into you and tells you about this information and holds you privy to that information. Most of men in the Punjabi community, especially like my dad's generation and all that, are not privy to any of this information, right? So it always comes to a surprise for them. But the stories are so recurring. And I think the biggest thing is how men handle the issue too. I think there's a lot of aggression attached to it. Like, aggression is there, right? Initially, when we started Core Voices, there was a lot of aggression attached to my involvement too, but you have to tone it down and reach root causes too to address issues, right? You have to be sane in your approach?
I think entitlement is huge in the Punjabi community, and the ability to intimidate other people. So I totally understand what you're saying. You know, that somebody feels entitled to say something to you no matter what, even if they might feel like it's well intended.
Right. And what Brumban brought up, that's an interesting point where men aren't privy. He's right. And I mean, the only reason I knew that, or I was able to relate to what he just said, was I recently read Valerie Kaur's book. And in there, she talks about how her mother and, you know, all these women would get together and just kind of talk about the crap that they're going through, you know, the abuse that they've been through or they've gone through as like a support group. But the men would never know because it wasn't allowed to be talked about. And I didn't realize that actually existed. You know, being a man, I had no clue. And that's so unfortunate that does exist. But that just sparked my, you know, when it's interesting.
Just to add another thing, not just the privy, but is when such abuses happen or in our communities or such serious situations arise, our resolvement are de facto adjudication within our families. I think we don't even discuss it with the abuser or try to confront the abuser. Right. I think it's just like we handle it internally. And usually it's just not even like the entire family, is like the adults in the household and the kids are just like somewhere else and they don't hear about it until they're like 20 in their late 20s, and they're like, oh, remember what happened like 10 years ago? And you're like, okay, but maybe it was a great teaching lesson for me at that age to know what boundaries I should be setting within my community and stuff like that. So I think it's the resolvement of issues is also a thing in the community. Like, I love the Punjabi community, but there's also inherent flaws within the community too.
And just to build on what he said, going back to Gurdarshan's case, you know, like the adults talked about it when I was a child. When I wasn't even born when this happened. So, but I grew up in that community, learned Kirtan from him, and in very close proximity to him. But no came and asked me and asked, hey, do you feel safe around this person? You know, has anything ever happened to you? Where I was surrounded by people who knew what happened. I didn't even learn about this case until the early, you know, or late 2010s. So I had no idea. And that's where that comes in, where that power is not given equally in when we go and try to resolve these problems within family systems. You know, it's the adults take care of it and then you never hear from it again. But giving children power in this type of situation will actually help them understand and grow better, and not to perpetuate that cycle when they're older. You know, yeah, go ahead.
It's also sometimes the situations are so serious that law enforcement needs to be involved.
Yeah,
but they don't get involved. A lot of cases go unreported and underreported in Punjabi community is because we don't want to get anyone else in our household involved that could help better the situation. We deal with it internally. It's such a huge issue. If you look at any victimization survey, the Punjabi community is the lowest reporting community for domestic violence. Right. The reason being is because we want to handle it internally. And some situations are so serious that the victims end up being abused to death, which is a ridiculous thing to talk about, but it does exist because they haven't been given the exit opportunities.
I agree with you. And I mean, this is something that I grew up with, this whole culture of silence. And it's really important for us to understand, especially in our space of this movement of core voices that we're creating, is why is that the case? Because if we can't understand why we stand in this position, we won't be able to remedy the problem. We'll just continuously be treating the symptoms, which is working with victims. And that's not where we want to be. That's not what we've talked about and that we want to give back to the Sangat and to the community. Daughters and the females in the household are basically treated as the torch bearers of honor of the family, right? We are what honor represents, and therefore if something happens to us, our family is dishonored. Our you know, if I've got siblings who are girls, they'll be unmarriable. I will be unmarriable. This is where we come from. Remember, in India, you know, people would lose their lives if you have messed with somebody's daughter. You know, it was ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਧੀ was ਸਾਰੇ ਪਿੰਡ ਦੀ ਧੀ ਸੀਗੀ, ਘਰ ਦੀ ਧੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗੀ. And if your daughter is the daughter of the village, it means everybody is responsible to protect her honor. And anybody looking at her in an untoward manner would result in huge conflict, huge conflict. Now, they've continued those values, and there's good behind them too. When I was younger, I felt disadvantaged because my dad he was overprotective. And I wasn't allowed to go to school trips. I wasn't allowed to go and stay at my cousins' houses unsupervised without my brothers. I couldn't speak to boys at all, full stop. And it was a very protected childhood from my father's perspective, because he thought he was doing the right thing with raising a young Punjabi girl in a foreign country without knowing the ways of the people. He did the best that he could do. But what he wasn't aware of was that predators lurk in close proximity.
Yeah.
And yes, it exists within our Gurdwara, it exists within our social circles, our friends, and our families as well. And this is a very deep-rooted problem in the whole of the South Asian community, but it is prominent in the Punjabi and the Sikh spaces, and that's what Core Voices is here to address. We have to fix our home first. We have to fix our community first before we can reach out and show up for other people. And I understood in my younger years that if something happens to me, I can't tell anybody, because if I tell somebody, then it means I'm never going to get married. And at that point, my conditioning was that you get educated, right? If you're lucky, you get to university, or you'll get married, you have kids, and you live happily ever after. Hasn't happened for anybody that I know yet. And that works that way because we force it to happen. There is no emotional support, no social training for these situations. What about when it goes wrong? Divorce is a taboo. I'm divorced, very happily divorced. Best thing I could ever have done. But me saying that to my community is raising eyebrows. Like, who's going to get married to you now? Did I get divorce hoya? Or I get the pity eyes. Hana?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, it must have been your fault kind of thing. But it's when we have divorce issues, a guy can go and get married the next day, but a woman is shelved. And this shows how disproportionately we look at things, how women are treated incredibly differently to men. A boy, a young man, can have relationships and sleep around before marriage. If it is found that a female has used a tampon, right? Just a tampon, nothing else, just to deal with her menstruation, that is enough to say, no, she is not a good girl. We're not going to get her married. We're not going to get our son married into that family. This must sound ridiculous to your ears. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to my ears as I'm saying it, but Preet and Brumbin, I don't know how you guys feel hearing this, because you sit in a male body. Your experiences have been different. And just hearing this much, I'm curious to know what you feel.
I think the biggest thing is it doesn't sound weird to me because I've heard it from a lot of female friends of mine, like same issues, same reoccurring issues about the biological clock ticking and constantly getting pressure from your parents, get married. It's like drilled into the conditioning of a person from the point they're born to the point they get married and have kids. So there's like check marks your parents have set for you that you have to accomplish. But I think the biggest thing is education. I grew up in a household where it's very liberal, and I've been very fortunate enough that my parents have been very open with me. And like, we have talked about stuff like this, right? We've talked about periods. We've talked about tampons openly, right? So but this does not exist in the Punjabi community, right? Like, not every parent talks about this, and education does play a role, right? My dad holds 2 degrees, my mom holds 2 degrees, so the level of education completely changes, right? I'm seeking a 2nd degree now, right? So that whole level of education within my household created this liberal environment, right? So education does play a big factor, but I just wanted to go back to a point you were talking about, is like all these confinements that Punjabi parents put on their daughters, and all that stuff. It also strips them from agency and independence. So what I'm trying to say is their financial agency, meaning that controlling their finances and having independency over finances, and they're just sole independent. So those 2 things are big in domestic abuse situations, or any kind of abuse situation, is they don't have the independence to leave, nor do they have the financial backing to look for something else. So they get stuck in a situation. This is why divorce was created, right? And I think every election cycle, the conservatives always talk about lower access to divorce. It's always a subliminal thing, but divorce is actually a saving grace for many women. And I think the Punjabi community refuses to realize that divorce actually has saved so many people's lives, right? So I think the biggest thing is, it's not just about, there's all these problems, but I think it starts with education at home, right? I've been fortunate enough to have very well-educated parents that made a very liberal household, but it's also like we as children have the responsibility in our households to engage our parents in that dialogue and conversation and open their minds to different situations, because it doesn't matter if you go to university or not to have this basic understanding.
Right, but there has to be a willingness from the young people to want to be educated about this. And so I grew up in a household with predominantly men. I had 3 brothers, and my dad is just me and my mom in the female party. And my mom came from the Pind in Punjab. So, she wasn't, educated about the ways of the West. And I'm born and raised in England, but I was raised like I lived in the Pind in Punjab. And that had a huge impact on how I was able to address these things and how I processed them. So I felt shame when I had been abused. I didn't know I was abused. And my first incident was when I was a child. And it was within people who were within the inner circle, right? I've had encounters through relatives. So I'm going to call it out. I've never said it before, but here we go. My first trip to India was when I was 16, and my parents sent me alone with my friend's family, and I'm living with my nanke out there and very large extended family. And one evening, staying at my Masi's house, my Masir, after he was drunk, decided he was going to touch me out. And my response to that was elbowing him in his stomach, punching him in his face and pushing him on the floor. And he's screaming. And my Masi comes out and she said, "What happened?" And I told her what happened. And she took me away. And she was like, "Oh, just come over here. He's drunk," and this and that. I was fuming. I was like 16 years old. That wasn't my first incident. As I said, it was normal to know that this is what men do and this is how they behave. I was just horrified at the fact that somebody I call uncle, that is my mom's real sister's husband, right, would try this. And when I asked them, has this ever happened before, it was like, this is what men do. I was like, why the F did you let me sit next to him then? Why did you say we tu ithe baith ke roti kha la? Je tonu pata hai ki odi ki aadat hai, kidan da hai tada aadmi, why did you say to me, where's your daughter? Onnu bithaunde ta kol, minnu ko bithaya? And it was
that's the example.
It is the example, but this is what I'm saying. The fear for me was that he has a daughter. He has a daughter in his household, and has she had that experience? Through talking to my other cousin sisters, my other Masiyan who lived there, they were like, yeah, we don't go near him. We don't give him hugs. I was so, oh my God, I was angry at them. I was like, why did you not tell me? Why did you guys, I was staying at your house a few days before. Why did you let me go and stay there? if you knew that that's what he's like. He literally touched up all of my cousin sisters. I spoke to my nanny. I was like, "Tanu pata kyun idan da hai?" And my nanny was like, "Ki kar sakde hain? Prauna hai." Hana? I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? Are you kidding me? Just because he's your son-in-law, it's okay." Hana? That was the last time I stayed there. I've never stayed at my nanke again after that. I'll go and visit them, do daytime visits, that's it. But I won't stay there because I don't trust them. There have been other incidents where, again in India as well, but there's many outside of, where we were traveling to Hajur Sahib and some guy on the train touched me and I turned around and I swore at him. And my mama, who was with me, my mom's brother, was with me. And he said, "Why did you swear at him? Ki hoya?" And I was like, "Onne minu chhedya," hana? And he was like, "Chal, chal, chal, agge chal." I was like, "Aren't you going to do anything? Aren't you going to go say anything to that guy?" And my mama was like, No, let's just go. Let's not cause a scene. Oh my God. I was just, I couldn't believe that this was the attitude. And it's just disgusting to know that this exists. Women are overly sexualized. And like you said, it's what happens in the mind when they're fantasizing these men. Because we haven't been adequately educated about sex, we think that we can just take it, or men think that they can just take it. And that's where the problem comes from. That's what the root cause is. I'm not saying all men are like this, but the majority, they fall into that category. And I'm sorry, but I was like very, very angry. I just needed to get that out there. So
I'm glad you shared.
Yeah, I'm glad to share that, and that touches me through. We are not teaching our people only about sexuality in a matter of like how your body works and like how people relate to each other, but we're not teaching them like what is abuse, what is actually, as Meta Benji say, like a crossing of boundaries. How do you answer when someone inappropriately touched you or say something to you or whatever? Like people don't know. Like I bet I can ask one of my niece or nephew, if somebody touched you here, do you know that this is abuse? Do you know? And they will probably wouldn't answer me yes or no. They don't know. So I think that's important. We need to educate on what sexual harassment is, what rape is, all of this, because if we keep it quiet as we have been doing so far, it's gonna keep happening because the person that doesn't know and the person who received the abuse also doesn't know.
Yeah, Grumbin.
I just wanted to say, like, all the examples you shared, goes back to the point I was raising, is stripping you of your independence and your agency, right? The adults in your household telling you that's just how they are, that's what it is stripping you of your agency and your independence, because they're molding you into that person. It's like, it's just what it is to stay silent forever. So it's good that you're cognizant about it and you can talk about it now, and you've had the ability to go through this and openly share it. But most people don't get these opportunities, and that's what we need to discuss. That's what we need to further.
Yeah, exactly. The reason that I brought these examples up, sorry to cut you off, Breathe, is because I think that firstly, we haven't talked about this in our community, but we are very ignorant as to where it happens. Some people think, oh, it only happens with a stranger coming to abuse you or to touch you, right? It can happen when you're in employment, in workspaces. It can happen in school. It can happen within your family. And there are cases, it's Sucha Singh, right? Who has been exposed. He's a sexual predator, who is a religious preacher as well. And I believe, I don't know the full story, but Preet, I'll let you share a little bit about that in a second. But it happens in our gurdwara, it happens in our families, it happens in every space. I used to love martial arts when I was younger. It was my outlet to deal with my trauma and my pain. From Gatka to other types of martial arts. The reason that I learned different types of martial arts, because I kept having to change my teacher. I kept having to change my teacher because there would always come a point where that teacher would cross a line. And I wasn't willing to partake in that sort of activity. I wasn't willing to allow myself to be exposed to other types of abuse, which was essentially what I would have ended up doing if I'd have stayed in that space. So people in positions of power will always try to abuse it in one way or another so that they can, take advantage. And there's a type of grooming that's in that process. They want to win your trust. They want to make sure that it's safe, that you're not going to tell anybody, and that their secret, or this dirty little secret, or whatever it is for them, will remain a secret. It shouldn't happen, full stop. Where it happens is everywhere. Who can it happen to is anybody. And our role here, that, we stepped forward, us guys, to say, no, enough is enough. It is time to call a spade, and in Sikh spaces, in our families, and in our gurdware, this shit is not acceptable, and we will not tolerate this. That is what Core Voices is about. That is why we are here now. And I want to ask you guys that, what is it for each of you that Core Voices is going to give to the community? Gurchanan, you go first.
Well, I think Core Voices is going to be that reference point when you are seeking one help. You know that you're going to find the resources that are going to help you out. You're going to find a place where you can express yourself without any judgment, without any negative consequence of you saying your story or you're just expressing yourself. And I think it's also going to be a place where we can create change for our and future generations within our pantic spaces. Because I believe this is also our mission as Sikhs. In the Guru's time, Guru has teach us, and Guru's Darbar was sacred, was perfect, because they were having the most highest morals, and they lived through that. And everybody was held accountable if something bad happened. And story and it does tell us these things. When they get lost, I don't know. So now is the time, and now is the moment that we can act on as a Sangat. And I believe this is what this space is bringing to the whole community.
Thank you. Breathe.
I just want to mirror off what Gurjanan said, copy and paste, literally beautifully said. I think that's literally it. We want to give voices to those that are in these, that's got, like, from our discussion today, everyone has some sort of connection, either personally or someone in their family. Is so rampant within our community, and Core Voices, like, I think why we're here is to help allow those victims to have a voice and bring it forward, because it is liberating. It really does help for the healing process. Like, you have to bring it forward to allow yourself to heal. Otherwise, it continues to sit inside and fester. And I mean, like Gurjana said, we want to be a teaching point as well. I think we need to help shape the community, and kind of create good practices and shape and form how it should look, basically. And work with gurdwaras, work with organizations similar to ours, and actually create a big community change. Not just, like, we within Sikh communities and South Asian communities, we tend to just do like our own little thing because we don't agree with this other group or we don't agree with that group. But this is such a vast issue that we want to work with other organizations. We want to work with other people in the field to actually bring change and really change the entire system. It's been over 100 years since our gurdwaras have been reformed. I think it's time to bring this change in now, because times have changed. There's a new order, and I think it's important to build that. And I think Core Voices will give people voices, because that's the first step. If we start hearing everyone else, if everyone's like, oh wow, you went through the same thing, I went through the same thing, and everyone starts speaking up, we'll realize that it's a very wide issue, and we'll have the power to then actually come together and make a change. But right now, the change isn't happening because everyone's denying it, or the victims and the people that are seeing it don't have that support. They don't feel the support. And I want everyone to know that you're supported. So if you do feel, you want to share, and you feel like you have something to get off your chest, reach out to us. This is why we're here. We wanna build this platform to give you a voice. So you're not alone. No one's alone. We all have connections with this, and we want to bring a change so that future generations don't have to do this.
Beautiful. Mehtab.
Sure. I think they Breathe and Benji summed it up really well. And the only other thing that I can think of is, Kaur Voices will not only be this non-judgmental space for victims, but also an educational tool where we normalize and destigmatize. We normalize what's healthy, and we destigmatize what's really truly wrong to think. And so I think Kaur Voices will be that guiding light for people to come forward and not only share, but also what can they take away from this space and how can they apply that in their own lives. So the way I see it is like it's kind of like a torch. So Kaur Voices is that torch that's kind of guiding people towards a better, more holistic way of living and honoring their trauma, not just like suppressing it every single day, walking it proudly, wearing it as a badge, that they truly honor every single day. I think that's what Kaur Voices is meant to be. Yeah.
I agree. Thank you. Brumbind.
I think early on in this conversation, we began by evolution, where things evolve over generations, and we are seeing an evolutionary change in thinking patterns and how our community reacts to situations and other communities as well. I think we brought a lot of insight into the Punjabi community and aired our grievances about the Punjabi community today. But it's beyond that. I think for me, Core Voices is the biggest thing. As I said in the starting, is offering that space for individuals. I think a lot of people get casted into a void where they don't have the opportunity to speak out. They don't have the opportunity to let themselves be heard by anyone. I think there are a lot of loud members in the community, in different communities, that always get the last word, and a lot of people get shushed and silenced to the side. So I think that's my main purpose with Core Voices and being involved with this team and working with everyone every single day is the conception that us being cognizant that those people who don't have a voice have a story, and that story needs to be shared with everyone, and that story needs to come out and it needs to be heard, regardless of if you doubt it or don't doubt it. That story has a purpose and it has a personal truth attached to it, and I think that's why I'm with Core Voices and all you guys constantly.
Oh, we love you, Brumbind. Thank you. So, okay, I put this to anybody who wants to answer and to share this. What work is Core Voices doing in the community to make a difference?
I think Preet should take the lead on this. Just pushing him down the rabbit hole here, but I think he should take the lead on this.
So currently we're working on multiple projects. One is, we're coming from different angles. One, we want to work with gurdwaras and community members to build a system that we can all use as a community to kind of safeguard these places that should be safe, right? So build policies and build some sort of like manifesto that basically we follow off of, right? So how Gurdwara should conduct background checks. Every person that has to deal with Sangat, teaching kids at camps or whatever, whoever wants to volunteer should go through background checks and things like that. So this is one thing we're working on right now currently, a project on this. We also, one is this Core Voices, where Josephine Benji is graciously enough, to take lead on this, and she's killing it, right? Getting to talk and giving people the space to speak and share their stories and educate as well. Benji's giving the space to so many different types of people on the show, from mental health workers to victims themselves, and to other organizations that are doing similar work to ours. and that's very important, right? We need to have more people. So if you want to be on the show and you know people that will benefit, right, the cause and will help raise more awareness or bring change, reach out to us, let us know. I think it's very important to work as a community. Otherwise, it's going to be like any other cause, any other, Punjabi organization is just, we just toot each other's horns and that's it. But that's not what we want to change that. We want to change that process. So Core Voices is not like that. We want to work to actually bring change. We're not just talk. And we're working on other few projects as well. We want to, our long-term goals are to offer guidance and consultation to victims. We have to work around, some things around that, but we want to give that space, not only to bring voices out, to allow you to speak, but also to help you, understand what you went through as a victim, and work with those emotions, because it is a very scarring thing to go through, right? Which definitely leaves many wounds within you. And if you don't work through it, if you don't have guidance on how to actually heal those wounds, because for years and years they continue to just fester and they continue to get like filled with pus, emotional pus. Sorry I use these the worst terms, but it's
very graphic and gross, but yeah.
That's what it is, right? Because I mean, people should know that it's not, it doesn't just, you don't just forget about it, right? It's a wound that can't be seen by people, but it's felt by the person, and it's painful, and it's not easy to endure. And we want to give that space to them too, that hey, look, thanks for coming forward. Your voice is heard, and we respect that. And we're here to support you. But hey, let's also work together to help heal you as well, right? Because sharing is one thing, but healing from that is another. And another thing down the road, I know, sorry, Gujanan, I know you have to leave, but another thing down the road is that we not only do we want to work with victims and help with their mental state through Sikh music and through other avenues, but we also want to give that support and that platform for those predators, those abusers that have, not all, I mean, obviously some will be in prison, but those that have come out, or those that want to learn to amend, because we're all human beings. And unfortunately, those that, become the abuser regret it. Most of them do. And they don't realize in that situation what they're doing until afterwards. And we want to have that type of space that, we want to be able to work with them and to give them a chance to work, because it's a mental issue. No matter what it is, it's a mental health issue. And we want to have that space for them to, and give that opportunity. And these are some of the projects we're working on. And if you want to help us, and if you want to give us support, and you have ideas and suggestions and however you want to help, you can donate to us. You can give us your ideas. You can, if you want to join the team, you always have the option to do that. Because again, we're an organization of action. We're not just talking, and we really want to bring change, because it's very much needed. And every day we wait, every day that we stay back, people like Gurdarshan and these abusers continue to be in these safe spaces, and our brothers and sisters and children are at risk. And I think it's very important that we bring this change now, because it's a community issue. It's an issue that's like literally in the layers of our community, and we need to start picking at it now.
Thank you. That's incredible stuff, and exciting to bring into the community, because this has never been done before. And it's wonderful to be a part of a sangat and a movement that is actually driven to make change, sustainable change. Brambin, is there anything you want to add?
I think Preet said it the best. It's Gurdarshan is just one of the cases. I think there's so many unnamed individuals that we don't even talk about or we know about. And I think people in position that exercise power over people need to be held accountable. And power just does not mean in institutions. Power comes from a relationship between you and your uncles, right? You as a younger person and your uncle being your uncle can exercise power over you. And in most situations, an abuser is exercising power over you. And I forget what, there's a couple of terms, maybe Matab remembers these terms. But yeah, just not to go on big tangent, but my whole point is that I think we have a lot of work ahead of us and we need all the support we can get, and whatever support the viewers are willing to offer us and however they want to be involved. But I think we have huge steps to take forward, and just starting a conversation is the first step, and I think we're doing that today.
Yes.
And
thank you.
Now, thank you. I want to say something too. I want to ask you, Benji. The same question you asked us, right? How is Core Voices here, and how do you see it growing, and where do you want it to go?
Wow. I wish it didn't have to exist. But we know that we need something because there's nothing. People are coming up to do work, but the work that they're doing is treating the symptoms and not the cause, the main problem. And I'm grateful for the level of expertise that we each bring to this space. We've all got our own level of skills that we can contribute into this space that allow us to actually show up more in a more powerful way for people who need that support. What you were talking about, the journey of a victim to a survivor, is a very important process that hasn't happened in our spaces in any regard. Our community's been through a lot of trauma, right? But if we're just zooming into one area and we're looking at sexual violence, it's existed for a long period of time. We were not allowed to talk about it. So we're finally in a space where we can talk about it. We've ticked that box. We have to be able to move to the next steps, and healing is a huge part of that. So I guess the vision, and it's not an it's just that, in this space, what do we want to do? How do we want to create it together? Is to be able to have community and support and healing as well. So we want to raise awareness. We want to educate people, young men, young women, older women, everybody. Like the people who run our gurdwara, the people who exist in our families and in our social circles. Right. How do we deal with these issues? How can we have emotional sensitivity? How do we listen? Because we don't know how to listen. If somebody comes to talk to us, what we do is, instead of being emotionally sensitive and being gentle, knowing that that person's sharing something really traumatic with you, we go very coarse and very, very abrasive in our responses. And it's like, oh, did that really happen to you? What did he do? What were you wearing? Where were you? And this person is emotionally sharing something so difficult, and your questions are so insensitive. You are adding to their trauma just through that lack of emotional sensitivity. I've been there where I needed to talk, and I didn't know who to talk to. So I leaned to a friend, but it wasn't my friend's fault, right? Because we don't have the education. But even if we operate from a place of compassion, we could still try to show up in a way that we would want someone to listen to us. Treat others how you want to be treated yourself. We're taught that as kids. To have those sorts of trainings and that sort of information available out there to make our gurdwara safe again. This is important. This is imperative, in fact, because if our homes are not safe and our community spaces are not safe, where are we supposed to go? Right? Out there, when we go into the world, we're the victims of racism and hate crimes. So no place is safe. That is a very dark and gloomy world. I don't want to live in that world. I don't choose to believe in that world either. I choose to believe in the world that Guru has given to us, which requires courage and love and hope and the strength to get up and do something, to do the right thing. And this is what we're trying to do here, is to say to our younger brothers and sisters that You have to become the one that you're waiting for. You have to be able to stand up and step forward into that front line, because this is our call to action. This is our moment to rise and say, no. It's okay that our parents didn't know. It's okay that the people before us couldn't do it. But now we have to do this, because if we don't, we will die a death while we live, knowing that this exists and this happened on our watch. I can't live with that. I can't live with that. And that was what pushed me into this space, that I will expose myself. I will say that I am a victim of sexual abuse and sexual violence from my childhood through my adult years. And that happened to me in Sikh spaces. That happened to me in Punjabi community and family spaces. And I don't feel tainted. I don't feel shame. And I don't want anybody else out there to feel shame, my brothers or my sisters who may have been made victims of these atrocious crimes. We didn't have the support, but we are creating the support. And this is all for you, for everybody who is tuning in and listening. Share this with the people that need it, and know that this community is there for you, and we will continue to show up for you. We will do the best that we can to create the world that we all would want to live in. And that starts at home. That starts with our Gurdwara. That starts with our community. That starts with our families. So reach out to us and support us. Lean in and become part of the community. Do whatever you can do to help make this space safer. Make Gurdwara safe. That is going to be a huge part of the work that we do at Core Voices. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this, and it's just all coming out right now. This isn't how I host my shows, but this isn't a show for me right now. This is about helping everybody out there to know why this space was born, and to stop those things happening, showing up and supporting each other and building better systems. I'd like for you guys to share a little about this survey that we need the community to support us on. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I want you guys to talk about it.
Okay, I guess I'll talk about it. Unless Brandon or Mehtab. No. Okay.
I think you're the best to talk about it.
Let me serve away.
This guy.
Sorry, I had to always for the dad joke in the It's just my signature. Sorry, you lost all your viewers at that moment.
Yeah, they just dropped right now.
So, sorry, I got to balance it out.
My beautiful, passionate speech. My joke.
So the survey, something it's a campaign that we're going to be working towards, starting, as soon as possible. We've created a survey it's anonymous, number one thing. So, your voice will be heard, but we won't know who you are unless you want us to know, obviously, but it's completely anonymous. And the purpose of the survey is to really understand the depth of where this, how you've been affected, in your community, the depth of how far this has gone. So we really want to hear your voice and kind of hear from you, and kind of build some sort of statistics on this, so we can analyze this data that we're collecting. And see what I know you have to go. So the survey is for this reason, is to collect data on our community. So the more people you can spread this survey to, the better, because number one, it's anonymous, and we want to build this data and understand how our community has experienced these types of abuses and other things that you'll see in the survey, and it'll help us kind of understand where we are currently. And then from that, we can build forward, we can find solutions, we can work with other organizations and community members and gurdwaras to build that change. But the survey is very important, because what it will do is it will allow us to understand how deep it goes. Like, when we go to a doctor, the doctor can't really help you until he diagnoses your entire body, right? He analyzes everything, goes through the problems, and then he kind of can pinpoint where to start from, right? And it's the same thing here. Our community is sick. It has issues, but we can't just poke needles at it, or like get a knife and start chopping things up. We have to first figure out where these issues are. So the survey is going to serve that purpose. It's going to give us the data that we need to really study and to understand where our community is at the moment, and then build off of that. And you'll see it on our social media. You'll see it, the link everywhere. So please go and take the survey, and then also share it with as many people. Benji, I don't know. They don't have to be within the Sikh community. It can be South Asian community as well. But please do share it as much as you can, because the more information we get in, the better we'll know how deep this goes, and the more it will equip us to fight this disease.
Yes, and the survey is currently designed to gather the statistics in the Punjabi and the Sikh community. When we reach out more into the South Asian community, we will be doing that work as well, but we have to first gauge how large a problem it is in our own home. This work has never been done before, so this will be the first time in our history that anybody is trying to gather this information, and we really, really need your support, because if we can all lean in and give that support, fill the survey, whether you have been through abuse or not, please still complete the survey. It makes a difference. It helps us to understand what we're working with and what work we need to do. Brambin, what are your closing remarks on that question?
It's
like Indian Circle, but on
a talk show, and I don't know why I keep getting the last word, but
You're most important, that's why.
I don't feel like I have a lot of important things to say on most days. But again, if you have the opportunity, please fill out the survey. It'll be a way for us to have a better outlook of situations that are happening within our community. We know the issues are prevalent. We just don't have the data to support it sometimes. And a lot of this data collection does not happen through regular statistical manners, through victimization surveys or regular census data, because the Punjabi community is the most least reported community in such situations. So it will be really beneficial if we could have some data and we can utilize it to better help our community and actually have better conversations about these types of issues and have direct causes to such issues too. So I think this is the biggest reason you should do the survey, and that's basically it. And it's anonymous. That's the biggest thing.
That's what I wanted to point out, that no matter who you are, you're not going to be known. So please don't be afraid.
Yes, thank you. And I love that our show has gone as long as it has, because we've talked about so many important things. I'm going to steal a little bit more of your time. I know that Gurchanan and Mehtab had to leave because we said an hour.
Then there were 3 at the end. Last man standing or last woman standing?
We'll see what happens. I'll be heading off in a minute. I'll leave you two guys here. I want to ask you guys something. And this is an important one for me because you both matter a lot to me. You both have a really special place in my heart, my brothers that I love. We're connected through Sikh music and through our spirituality of Sikhi. You both know about my most recent incident, which was the reason that we created this space of Core Voices, right?
Catalyst.
Yes, that was the catalyst. There was an incident that happened a few years ago with myself, of course, and I shared it with both of you. And I'd like you, if you don't mind, to just share with everybody who's tuning in how that made you feel. Because the irony of the situation is, for some people, they think that I should be a man hater. But a lot of my support system is male. So I'm not saying that, it's only men that abuse. There are incidents where women also abuse men as well. This does happen. It's in the minority when we're looking at the bigger scope of things. The ratio is, different. But the fact that my abuser was a male but also my support system was male too. Most people don't get that. Most women turn to women. And I'd like to know, like, Preet, you were there shortly after this had happened, and you were the first person that I told, in fact, the only person in that moment, and how that was for you and what it felt like, and, you know, how it relates to this movement. And Brumbin, the same question to you when you found out, how it made you feel, and what about that brought you into this space of joining the movement? So we'll go to Brumbin first.
Okay.
I think it was like something out of a movie when you told me, because it was really late at night and we were sitting at a dinner table. I think it was us two and one more person was there, and usually not. I think it's How I Met Your Mother. So I think Ted says nothing good happens after 2 a.m. So yeah, it was something like that for me. It was just we were just talking about a lot of things, and then we started talking about the issues we basically talked about today too, and then this came up, and I think, and this was not my first time hearing of it. I've been put into positions by a lot of female friends too who've told me about this. So not the first time I've heard of it, but it's also like you have to catch myself and have to be cognizant of how I react to the situation, because I think the first reaction for me always, in anyone who's told me about their abuse or trauma, is always met with aggression. So, and I don't think that's the right thing to deal with right away. I think the aggression needs to be there, but it needs to be channeled to do something more positive. So I think my initial reaction in that moment was, what do I do? Because enough is enough. Like, I'm tired of hearing these stories, and then I hear these stories, and a lot of it is met without a backbone, and no opportunity. We just talk about it, and then it's just like, oh, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. You got it off your chest, and then we never talk about it ever again. And I think you just hear over and over again that you get fed up with the situation and you just want to do something.
Right. So my story. So we this is the craziest thing. You know, we were at an event where we had just done kirtan, and like, it wasn't in a gurdwara, but it was in a like a venue, and so there was a backstage, and I, like, you know, like, looking back, there's always that regret, like, not regret, but like, what if I just walked in like literally 3 minutes earlier. So we had just finished kirtan, and Benji went to the back room to pack up the instruments for, you know, Benji's instrument, the rabab and the saranda Prabhasiji. And so I was out there because, you know, people come up and start asking you questions. Usually I go back and help, but this time around I stood out. And I remember when I finally had the chance to go back, I go behind the curtains, and I'm going towards the door, and I see Benji just in the state of shock, almost like just by the door, like in, you know, I've known Benji for years and years, so I knew something was off the moment I saw her face, and I'm like, what's wrong? Like, everything okay? And Benji was like, you know, like, she was in a state of shock, literally. And I remember in that moment, like, I you know, like, you get that gut feeling, and then you feel like, you know, like your stomach sinks, your heart sinks into your stomach. So I felt that at that moment before she even told me. And then she told me, she's like, but before I tell you this, you have to promise me that you won't react in any other way. Just, I want you to just hear it and don't react, please. Yeah, I just need this at the moment. And so then she told me that, you know, this dude, do you mind should I share the details? I should keep the details out. So this dude just, you know, did something, took advantage of the situation. And at that moment, like, you know, as a male, right, the first instinct you have, especially when the perpetrator is still there, or the, you know, whatever, the abuser, is you know, it's you want to kick their ass to a whole different level, right? You want to get violent real quick, because that's what you know, and that's what he deserved at the moment too. But, you know, Benji said, just please don't do that, because the situation we were in, unfortunately, you know, we had to, at that time, like, it just wasn't the time, because whatever it was. But I the only way I could convince myself and calm myself down was I had to play off of Benji's emotions, because I had to kind of match at her, what she wanted at that moment. Because, and this is, I think, very important to understand, like, this is where emotional intelligence is very needed in our community, because any other guy would just invoke his ego right there and say, no, step back, I'm gonna go kick his ass. I'm sorry to use these words, but but I had to put my ego down. I had to respect Benji's wishes, and but it's not like I didn't do anything about it. I gave her the support that she needed at that moment, and I was able to support her how she needed it, not how I thought it was right. Right? Because my male ego would have been like, no, let me take care of this now, right? But that's not what the situation required at that moment for that specific reason. What it required was what Benji needed, right? And it's very important for our community to understand that too, like, that it's not, violence is not always the answer, right? Sometimes in those situations you have to know how to react. But if especially if the person who's just been abused says, you have to understand, you have to come at their wavelength. You can't just enforce yourself on them, because that's literally just what happened to them. You have to allow them to take charge. You have to allow them to tell you how they want to be helped. And these are very important issues. This is why I always talk about emotional health, mental health. It's very important. We have to be aware of these things. And so, long story short, that's how I felt in that moment. But afterwards, like, my mind was like, man, I wish I just had went in 3-4 minutes earlier, and this wouldn't have happened. But because it happened, Core Voices was created. So
Thanks for that story. Because it happened, that's the end. Yeah, that was tough for me just now, even just to hear that and to go through it. And I'm not ready to share those details just yet. Again, it's not a shame. It's just a healing process that I'm still in, and I'm still in my journey of that. But what was really imperative for me in that moment, it would have been completely different and really affected my process of healing if you had have reacted with your own instinct and not had the capacity to listen to me and hear my needs. What you did for me was incredible. Like, I can now say that to you. You gave me the support that I needed to let me feel strong enough to deal with it and find my way through it, to know what I need to happen in terms of justice or whatever. You're 100% right. Had you have acted in your own instinct, it would have just regurgitated the trauma in another way by another man enforcing their will on a situation that requires my voice, but I don't have a voice. So I'm deeply grateful for you to have shown up for me like that. It meant the world to me then and now. And I hope that from you sharing this, other men out there will take something away from that and try to show up in that way. And Brambin, you and Preet are both very similar in your personalities. I know how emotionally sensitive you are, and you have the capacity to listen and to be compassionate. And these are the qualities that we need in all people, but especially in Punjabi and Sikh men. We can only talk about the issue in our home at the moment. Once we have resolved it in our spaces, we can then talk about other communities. So yes, this problem exists everywhere. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist in outside spaces. It does. But we have to look at ourselves right now. And as a community, I hold us all accountable. We have all had some sort of an incident or heard some sort of an incident has taken place. What have we done about it? And what are we willing to do about it? Preet, what are your closing remarks?
Just want to say this, that, like, everyone has a voice, and we're here to provide that. We're here to provide that space for you. You're not alone. If you're watching this right now and you've experienced things and you've went through, if you're a victim or you've seen someone go through this, you have a voice. You're not alone. We've all have some sort of connection with this, and we need you to come out, and we need you to, at your own, when you feel comfortable. But we're here to support you. You're not alone is my main message, that we want to give you your voice. You have your voice. You just got to speak up, and we're here to support you and back you. And our main mission is to bring the community, and bring that change, because that's what's needed. But I just want to close with this, that you do have a voice. Please speak up, and we're here to support you. We're on your side.
Completely. I agree. And honestly, I don't know why the last word keeps coming to me in these situations, but as I said before, everyone with their personal truths needs to have a voice in every situation. And I think what our society doesn't encapsulate is understanding that people need different areas to have our space to have a voice. And I don't think everyone gets the opportunity to have such a space. And I think this is why our primary focus, and I keep repeating space and being cognizant, these two words a lot, and I'm subconsciously keeping track of that too now. But but the reason is that I keep saying those words is, if we don't be cognizant of giving people their space, I don't think we'll ever reach a point where people can actively deal with their trauma and start the healing process. So to echo exactly what Preet said, just in different words.
Thank you. Sorry, I just had a little coughing fit. But thank you guys. Thank you so much for sharing that, for being open, and most importantly, for being role models for men in our community and helping to share with them how they can show up better in these spaces. I appreciate both of you guys. I appreciate Mehtab, Guruchanan, and Harjap, all of you guys who are holding this space and helping to build this movement. And it's a call out to everybody who's a part of the Core Voices community. If you're tuning in, we need your support. We need your active support. We need you to get involved. And we are responsible to make our homes and our Gurdwara safe. That is our collective responsibility. Please reach out and support us. You can email us info@corevoices.org. You can reach out to us on the website www.corevoices.org, or through Instagram or Facebook. We are here to serve you and to show up for you. We need your support. When you see that link for the survey, please click the link, complete the survey, reach out to us, and let's do this. Let's eliminate sexual violence in Sikh and Punjabi spaces. That is our goal, and we need your support to do this. Pritinder and Brambin, thank you guys for sticking it out till the end. The 1 hour turned into 2 hours, but I love you guys. You are amazing.
I think this is like we're competing with Joe Rogan at the moment.
I was saying that to Pre earlier today too. I'm like, things just kind of run long with us. We might go to 4 hours or something. So
I love it. This is like our Sikh needs this. We have Joe Rogan podcast Sikh version.
Completely side note before you end this, you said me and Preet are very alike. I have a picture of me as a little kid, and I saw a picture of Preet as a little kid. Exactly the same. We look exactly the same.
For a second, I thought you were going to show them both.
No, I don't have them right here. I'm never going to show them both.
Wallet. He just keeps a baby picture.
Just remember, like, I look exactly like this.
Hey, look, is that your kid? No, is this some random dude's picture?
That gives the best impression of us, that we just carry baby pictures of each other in our wallet. I wonder if I look like you guys in my baby pictures.
I think you do.
I think all Punjabi kids probably do.
Right?
Okay, in the next episode that we do, we'll share our baby pictures.
Let's do it. Also, I just wanted to say shout out to Harjap again, because I know he really wanted to make it, but poor kid is working hard in university. But he's done a lot for Core Voices as well. So I just wanted to give a special.
Yes.
He would have been here if he could.
Yes, he has. Hajab, be sending you lots of love. Thank you for everything that you do. Shout out.
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys for joining us today and for holding this space. I'm excited for everything that we're going to be doing, and it's time for us to do this, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Let's make it happen, family.
Let's make it happen. And
Yeah.
thank you for tuning in to Core Voices. We will see you again next week.